Good morning, good afternoon, possibly good evening, wherever you are in the world. This is AWS Security Live. My name's Rob Hale. I work in AWS's partner organization, leading strategy in EMEA for our security partners. As ever, I am joined by my amazing co-host this week,
Wow.
Brian.
Amazing this week. We'll see about next week. We're not sure yet. A little too early to tell. My name is Brian Mendenhall. I am the worldwide head of the security and identity partner specialist team at AWS. Stick around next week. I'll have maybe one more word in my title. We'll see how things go.
You're doing a collection for words in titles. I love it. For those of you who haven't joined us before in AWS Live, as we're live, we're a video broadcast. We go out on YouTube, on LinkedIn, and on Twitch every 2 weeks. So that's 8 a.m. PST. If you're in the UK at the moment, that's 4 o'clock British summertime, and it still is British summertime. It may not look it outside the window, but we digress. But each week we will be talking about security topics that customers care about with a range of guests from Amazon and also from some amazing partners. And this week is no exception, except for we have two guests on for our first episode. So we are welcoming PricewaterhouseCoopers, or PwC, and we have Alex Cherones and Marianne Olsen. So that's the Cybersecurity Managing Director and the Cybersecurity Director of PwC on with us. And we're going to be talking about AI and automation. So welcome.
Thanks so much for having us here today.
Hi there.
Hi.
Good to be here.
Great to have you on board. So tell us a little bit about yourselves. How did you get into security and AI, and what are PwC talking to customers about?
And what's your favorite color? I'm just sliding
And
that
what's
one
your favorite
in.
color? Yeah.
Important stuff here. All right. Got the hard-hitting questions, Brian. Appreciate that. My favorite color is black. I love black and white, making things clear, and that's part of the thing of jumping into cybersecurity. So I kind of stumbled into it through college, as I feel like all do, but really quickly found a passion when I was working in the incident response and doing overall day in, day out, midnight to noon shifts, reacting to the threats coming across the wire. Nowadays, I like to spend a lot of my time in the preventative measures and helping to set up and working with our AWS Alliance and working with governance, risk, and compliance, or GRC technologies, to be able to better drive adoption and all the processes that then make it easier for those frontline folks.
Awesome.
Yeah.
How about yourself, Alex?
Let's see. The most important answer first, I guess green would have to be the first answer. And then I'm a technologist at heart. So the vast majority of my career has been spent building and securing security platforms for a variety of different customers and clients all over the world. So helping to open organizations that focus in AI at scale, and building innovation organizations focused on security all the way from the Middle East, and then certainly all the way over here to the United States. So AI and the application of AI in security has been kind of the most recent focus here that we're talking about today.
Cool. And we'll get to we'll put in some other questions later on, like first pet, telephone number, that sort of stuff.
Telephone number, the year you were born. We may be building your passwords.
Mother's maiden name.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Brilliant.
know
It's
the
great
deal.
to have you on board. Absolutely amazing to have you here with us. So let's talk around AI. I mean, there's a huge amount of buzz around AI. There always is, and now you have agentic AI as well. No matter who you are, you can't really get away from people talking about it, and whether that's an application owner or another business owner who wants to use AI, or you're a security professional and you're trying to secure using AI or against AI. It's a really, really complicated and fast-moving world. So, what are PwC seeing in terms of what are customers talking to you about, and how are you helping them? What's the number one question that you get from a security practitioner at a customer?
I would say the big question that we get a lot these days is, how is the introduction of artificial intelligence changing the threat landscape? That is kind of what is forefront in the vast majority of the conversations that we're having today. And our response is usually more kind of broad to start, and then more specific depending on the company and the industry in which they operate. And I'll start kind of from a broad perspective. We talk about AI and security kind of two different ways. One is the application of artificial intelligence in security. And then the other is using security and securing the AI itself. And so depending on what side of the coin you're talking about, that kind of influences the discussion a little bit. I'd say, and Marianne, please jump in here. I'd say the first is kind of focused on, tools for good, and those same tools being used for challenging and problematic purposes. I think you see a lot of bad actors out there today using and quickly adopting and scaling and automating the use of AI for reconnaissance, for pen testing, for being able to automate a lot of these phishing and vishing campaigns that we're seeing out there that are becoming more and more sophisticated as the time goes on. So I think that's one side. And then certainly the answer to that is being able to use those technologies to scale proportionally with those increase in attacks and reconnaissance and what we're seeing there. Marianne, before I jump on, any other kind of view of that?
Oh, I think that's spot on. As the conversation has shifted over the last couple of years, right? Initially, a lot of it from the security landscape was, hey, let's shut things down. We need to stop, and we need to assess, and we need to work through what this is. And we're past that. And if you are still in that stage, then you're missing out on a lot of the different great scale and capability that you can be deriving as an enterprise, whether that be competitive advantage in your specific business function or even within the security landscape. Because frankly, right, if you have a range of tools that are available and the other people are fighting with a more advanced technology, you're only going to be so effective if you're back with your katana and you've got a bunch of other things coming at you. So you've got to be thinking through the landscape that you're in, and then being embracing of the technology that's available to you so that you can be more effective. And that's really the shift, the pivot that we're seeing with a lot of the security teams that we're talking through now is, okay, like we did the initial lockdown. Now let's think about how we can strategically open that capability up and how we should be better leveraging it as practitioners so that we can get that scale and that we can spend less time doing the compliance, doing the reporting, and more time doing the actual innovative protections that will actually help drive overall growth at the company and scale those skills and capabilities.
Marianne, you had me at katana, like locked in, laser beam. Well, I'm ready. Like put me in because I'm ready to go. I guess it's so interesting to hear the business adoption of AI in the to run your business and to accelerate the business objectives that your company has. But then you've also got attackers using AI, you've got defenders using AI, you've got all these different cohorts of AI. In security, are we seeing a traditional security tool with a new layer of AI? And so we still have these all of these tool sets now supercharged with AI, or are we seeing now a fundamental shift in security tooling? Is it on the horizon that at some point we're going to see some tools we've never thought of, never imagined, because now AI is no longer just a buzzword. It's actually it's a fundamental thing that we have.
Absolutely. I think overall the trends of things, you've got the constant swing back and forth between capabilities. So right now we've been in a swing of very prolific amounts of security tools where you've got organizations that have 80 to 100 different security tools that are in place and they're hitting their specific niche. But with some of this capability and bringing that information and data sets together, we're already starting to see some of that consolidation again, right? That swing back into what that consolidation looks like. And really that's the shift to some of the builder culture and some of what we'll talk through here from PwC and AWS's joint innovation, as well as being able to take ownership back within your overall application systems, and be able to say, okay, so yes, we've got all these different tools that are doing these point solutions, but as we bring that data together, we can actually drive a lot more value. We can do things that we couldn't do before because it was controlled in such isolated spaces, but now we can bring that information together and leverage it more effectively, and we can come up with those new and innovative use cases that wouldn't have been possible before.
So we see quite a lot. Sorry, Brian. As I say, we see quite a lot of both ISVs and customers and our partners using AI to almost democratize security data. So you've got silos of data everywhere. There's always a dream of having everything working together, but you've also got different platforms as well. You've got it on-prem, you've probably got private cloud, you've got public cloud. They have various flavors of that. You've got SaaS. And so one of the main use cases that we see big interest in is, how do I assess just our security posture across all of these different environments? And they all have different names for their data stores, their services, etc. So being able to summarize that information and present it in a form where you can ask fairly plain language questions and get plain language answers back, it's really, really powerful for scaling security and helping make sure that others in the business can understand security as well.
Absolutely. And Rob, I gotta bust you, bud. I think you threw SaaS out there.
Really?
We didn't tee this up on the show. We skipped it, but acronym alert, right? So on the show, if we say any level of acronym without defining what it is, you get busted. So Rob, cookie in the jar, coin in the jar. My goodness, SaaS, if you wanted to find that. Software as a service. There we go. All right. I only say that because Rob got me last time, and I haven't slept since.
And there's no rivalry. We're not keeping scores at all. Where is my notebook?
Nice. It's so funny you say that, Rob. I had a conversation with a mountain biking buddy of mine, and he goes, I've been storing my pictures on my phone in the cloud, and it's too expensive. So now I bought a hard drive. And so now my pictures are like on my desk. And I was like, that's great. What kind of security do you have around this, like internet, accessible? He's going through the cloud to his hard drive. What kind of protections do you have? Also, like, what kind of RAID are you using? And all these questions. And he's like, oh my gosh, I had no idea. Right. It's interesting, the level of security that is built into stuff nowadays. And Marianne, to your point, we've had this massive expansion of tooling and like new growth capabilities and use cases. Reconsolidation is like a supernova. It's like pulling back in, right? We have had this massive density. I guess my question to you on the PwC side is, with the technology growth and use cases, we still have always had this fundamental layer of conceptual security, right? Like the cyber kill chain, that kind of hasn't changed. Do you think that there will be any changes in fundamental security methodology when we talk about how this conceptually works? Is any of that going to change, or do we expect to see that stay the same?
Yeah, go for it, Alex.
Sure. I think the answer is yes, and let me talk a little bit more about that. I think it will change fundamentally on a couple fronts, specifically as it comes to securing AI. So we talk about the use, going back to that example, right? Remember, there's the use of AI for security and securing AI, right? So for the securing AI part, making sure that you're able to approach things differently than you would have traditionally. Specifically, when I say that, I talk about model hardening, adversarial training of models, and in the traditional sense of what we talk about when we talk about red teaming. So, when we use red teaming traditionally, making sure that you're putting on your bad guy hat and you're going to attack and simulate some of those attacks on various systems. The same is also true when you're securing AI, and having the ability to make sure that you're hardening those different models is fundamentally important at a moment in time, and then certainly in the future, Rob earlier commented on the use of agentic AI and the expansion of that. As that continues to expand, I think you're going to see more and more of that become more and more prolific. The other piece of that, so that's kind of the new part to answer that side of the question, I would say. The slightly more kind of traditional piece is making sure that you're doing best practices that are in place today that we're already kind of aware of. Specifically, when I say that, I'll use the example of identity and access management. So the rule of least privilege I'll use as kind of the first example there, in making sure that these agents are not overprivileged. Just like all of us here, none of us should have superhero access to all the things in the environment, right? The same should also most certainly be true when we're talking about the use of agentic AI in security. So making sure that you're using some of those traditional mindsets and traditional security approaches is paramount when it comes to making sure that this AI is secure. Marianne, would you add, correct anything to that? Yeah.
No, I mean, I would just double down on the second portion that Alex was saying, because I feel like I talk to executives and they often can get either they're the ones already embracing, or they get a little squirrely. They get, I don't know what to do about AI and how is it going to change the things, and like, how can I be prepared? And ultimately, a lot of it comes down to those fundamentals. How you're applying that changes, right? You're not looking at your little sandbox and you built your moat and now like that's your perimeter. Now what that perimeter is has shifted, and like how you're protecting the capabilities has shifted. But ultimately, you're still thinking about data. You're still thinking about identities. Now those identities may be for human identities and for agents, and like thinking about some of those different components and different protections, different coaching, different training, different things are needed in order to help support those. And they have different weaknesses and strengths. And so ultimately, the folks who have been doing this for a long time, all of that is very valid knowledge. And for the individuals kind of growing up underneath this and coming into it fresh, I think it'll be more native for them to be able to understand the difference, but they'll still need the coaching from people who have had those traditional sandbox type of views, so that they can understand the things that we care about, where those crown jewels are, so that we can then better identify that perimeter and those different levels of controls that should be in place there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's it's really interesting what you both say, talking about security foundations and security fundamentals. The basic things that we do on other workloads are absolutely relevant to an AI workload. So I get asked quite a lot, and I sit in a lot of conversations where a question might be, how do I secure AI? And that's probably the wrong question to ask, because let's not look at it from the basis of how do I secure AI. Look at it from the basis of, do I have a consistent and reliable security framework that has the controls in place and the monitoring in place to protect the data, to make sure the identities aren't overly privileged, and if they do have privileges, they have just enough to make sure they perform their function. We're monitoring for threats and vulnerabilities, and then we're able to respond. And then the other element is learning how your application works. And this is sometimes a really new concept for customers, because a lot of customers, maybe they haven't done threat modeling.
Oh,
that's a great shot, Rob.
I agree.
That's perfect. Someone screenshot this and send it to me. I will hold this against them forever. He's back.
I'm back. Look at that.
And that is the meaning of
monologuing as well.
Love it.
Went into the fourth dimension for just a minute. Rob, welcome back. How was it? Did you meet anyone special?
It was quiet. It was quiet. I did feel lonely.
We lost you at understanding the model, the application that you're building, and being able to secure each of the components of that application. So, like, really digging into what you have built where.
Yeah, exactly. And the other bit is, how does your application work? Are you doing threat modeling to understand how the application is working versus how it should be working? And that's the thing that I think a lot of application owners and security owners need to work together on, to understand that, look, we might have the security foundations in place, but is the model performing as it should be? Is it outputting the right things, or is it allowing users to ask questions they shouldn't be asking and responding to that? And that's super important, I think.
I would agree. And along those lines, Rob, like what you're talking about, Marianne, what you're mentioning as well is start with the basics. When we see breaches on the AWS side, it typically is because there was no MFA en route. Like crazy, we're still talking about that, but it's simple, basic controls. Your ACLs and your firewall haven't been updated in 12 months. Alex, over permissive, long-lived accounts, right? Like, hey, this guy has admin account and he hasn't worked for the company in 18 months. Like, these are huge problems. And what we're talking about here is governance, compliance. Marianne, I think you mentioned this in the beginning, right? And Rob, you said frameworks. So on the PwC side, what frameworks, what governance are you seeing that is coming in as a starting point, as like a foundational point through which to secure your environments?
Yeah, I think that is 100% spot on, Brian, with noting, right, those more mundane, if you will, activities, those things that kind of keep the lights on, are absolutely where the time and attention should be focused. I think so often I have people come up to me and they're like, "Oh, you work in cybersecurity, so it's this sexy thing. It's the things that you think of from the movies of the penetration testers going in and it's sudden and it's quick, but it's all those little things along the way. It's the regular check-ins that are coming back and you're doing your identity verifications. It's the fact that you are going in and you're securing those different capabilities. So we work across a lot of different clients in a lot of industries. And so for that, what we will do is we'll talk with the clients about some of those standard frameworks, those regulatory requirements, and help them map all of that in together and understand, okay, if I'm required to comply to PCI and I'm required to comply to HIPAA and GDPR and all of these different pieces, then what does that control set need to look like? What are those requirements? And then more importantly, how do we actually enable the business to be successful with that? How do we work through so that we can do the appropriate reporting on all those different controls, but also bug the people that need to be doing the manual steps, right? Because we're not in such a space where everything can be automated. There are those validations that need to happen. And that's where you can be really leveraging those GRC technologies, which are the governance, risk, and compliance technologies that I had mentioned, so that you can really build those workflows. So it's just a part of your business. It's just a part of your work, so that you can essentially drive that forward. That's also the piece that was a core tenet in the PwC and AWS development of what we call our cyber analytics platform, which is really built within a client's environment to help connect those dots and be able to help provide some of that reporting, but ultimately plug into your existing GRC technology or tools, your ticketing systems, plug into those other security tool sets and be able to demonstrate that compliance, but also provide that visibility of where things are breaking down, because things always break down. But then we can spend the time and attention where we need to in fixing those fundamentals.
Right.
That's
Like,
a really good use case.
yeah. So, I mean, compliance and governance, GRC is not a once a year activity, right? It is a perpetual ongoing effort for not just the sake of meeting the compliance and having that stamp, right? Like SOC 2 and HIPAA and whatever else it is, but it's also to improve your security posture, to get some of those fundamental controls in place, to get the right things in the right place, so that, like we've talked about at the start, so that your AI is secure and you've got your defenses, you've got your walls and your trebuchets and everything else is built in the right place. Super interesting stuff. And so if you're watching the show and you're the one that has to stitch all this together, hopefully you're not doing this manually. I remember working at a place where we did that, like 10, 15 years ago, and the poor soul that had to ask everybody all of those questions. Like, there is help, right? PwC, you have a solution that helps to bring all this together, to automate and to move the security posture forward.
That's right. That's right. So that's what Marianne was just talking about, is the cyber analytics platform. And that's one of the modules. That continuous compliance module is what we're talking about when we do that. So think about that Herculean effort that you were talking about back in a previous life, Brian, that's required to do all of that compliance related activity is absolutely massive. So if you're able to automate that, it's a quantum leap forward, right? Because traditional compliance is really a moment in time, right? So what is the response at that moment in time is going to ultimately be different as time goes on. And Rob made that comment, right? It's not a once a year activity. It should, if done correctly, should be something that's ongoing. Of course, we're challenged by human power in the amount of folks that you have on a team to be able to do that. And so being able to do this in an automated and continuous fashion is imperative for us to kind of continue to move forward in our industry as more and more AI becomes pervasive. The other piece behind that is also the so what. So now that I have a view of compliance on a continuous basis, so what? So the so what is how are you able to leverage AI to start making recommendations and remediations to updates? So here's a moment in time in the cloud environment, and you have some misconfigurations that there's drift off of your golden image, right? So what steps need to be taken to reestablish that to where it needs to be? That is kind of the full loop and life cycle of what we talk about as continuous compliance. So it's not just identifying, but it's also recommending and saying, hey, here are the steps that need to be taken to get back to good. Does that make sense?
So it's a force multiplier in terms of not only discovering where you are in terms of compliance frameworks and regulation and your own policies as well, but also where you could be next week, for example. So if we apply a new environment or maybe even a new framework, what's the gap to compliance? How are we going to do that? And then how do you actually execute that? Because it's typically not going to be the security team who's then going to go and do things like patch remediation, etc. It's the development team. So having the ability to scale that and monitor, has that been done? Has a ticket been opened? Has it been escalated? Has it been actioned and has it been validated? That's really, really key to providing the regulators as well with the right data points so you can prove compliance or evidence compliance, I should say.
And there's always more to be done than can ever be done, right? So helping to support their prioritization so that those teams aren't inundated with 5 different dashboards, 5 different places that are telling them, oh, this is the most important thing. But actually, from an enterprise perspective, thinking about, no, please do A, and then we can move on to B, right? And if you have that finite time, like this is where you should be spending it and helping to prioritize.
Yeah, that's really key because no one wants to be judged in terms of a metric by the number of vulnerabilities that have been found in the platform, but reducing the time to mitigate those vulnerabilities or assess them, that's a good metric to start to be reporting to the board in terms of cyber readiness. So that's awesome. Marianne, Alex, it's been amazing having you here. If you have any questions or you want to find out more around what PwC are doing around AI and security, then there'll be a QR code popping up on the screen shortly. But I'm going to leave Brian with 2 words. One is SOC 2, and the other is RAID.
Oh my gosh. I gotta put more in the jar. SOC 2 Security Operation Compliant, Security Operations Center. I don't know what the 2 stands for. I don't remember SOC 1. And then RAID is a random array of independent disks, I believe.
Hey,
redundant array of independent disks. That one's took me back about 30 years. I had to go deep for that one.
Me too. I wasn't even going there. I thought I'll let Brian. He's dug himself into that hole. I'll let him dig himself out.
I'm never going to do it again.
A little bit. SOC 2 specifically, though, is system and organization controls too. So it's a reg framework. But normally when we say SOC, it does mean the other SOC. So it's
that there's too many. We've got overlapping acronyms. Thank you, Marianne. I was swinging a miss over here. I missed them both.
Awesome. It's time for us to leave you. Thank you so much. Audience, join us for part 2. We have CyberArk. We're talking about identity.
Thanks all.
very much,
Thank you all. Appreciate it. Great talking.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us here at Security Live. My name is Brian Mendenhall. I am the worldwide head of the Security Identity Partner Specialist team. The words will come out, Rob. I think I need a little bit more coffee.
How much coffee have you had? Not enough.
I did not finish my first glass. I was thinking, about,
man.
am I allowed to show my mug on TV or not? We'll figure that out later. Legal will jump in. I am not alone. My wonderful, magnificent, most amazing host of all time. I'm joined by the wonderful Rob Hale. Rob, introduce yourself.
Hello, everybody. Welcome again to AWS Security Live. My name's Rob Hale, and I lead AWS's partner security business in EMEA. So I glue together all the different parts of our partner organization with our office at the CISO and our field community to try and create solutions that solve for security challenges that you, our customers, have. So great as ever to be here. We're going to be talking to an amazing partner, calling each other out on acronyms, maybe ones from more recently than 30 years ago, if you caught the last one, but we'll see how we go. So who have we got today, Brian?
So today we are joined by CyberArk with Florin Lazurca. Florin, are you here? There you are. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm getting my my wallet ready for all the acronyms I'm about to drop.
Perfect. When we do these live at reInvent, Reinforce, we have a physical jar on the desk with little gold doubloons. And to your point, Florin, just drop some of those bad boys in there before the show starts and let them rip. Let them fly.
That's real imitation plastic. Exactly. We should just find that out. So we're going to talk about identity, or we're going to talk about certificates and key management. So tell us a little bit about CyberArk and how you got into security as well.
Sure. So back 3,000 years ago, about 20 years ago, after college, after the military.
Really old, by the way. So.
I think you started a little earlier than I did. After college, after the military, I took some security and networking certificate courses. I started as a junior network administrator. The cables, the backups, everything. Kind of grew into doing some penetration testing for the company I was working for. It was a MSSP, a managed security service provider. Small startup. Then kind of went into a larger corporation that did. I did the professional services. So I got my hands into everything: application layer, firewalls, load balancers, mobile device management, and that all deals with different layers of security, whether the application or the network. But one of the underpinning things was certificates. And at CyberArk, we call them machine identities. They're one type of machine identity. So yeah, it's all kind of been revolving around identity for the last 20 years for me.
Awesome. And actually, our previous session, we were talking about AI and identity being kind of one of the foundations for AI security, and really, most pertinently, non-human or machine identities as well. So, so tell us about how CyberArk are approaching problems around digital trust.
Yeah. So I think at a high level, right? So machines and machine identities, we all know that they really outnumber the number of human identities that are around, right? So I think we did some research, it's 82 to 1, right? So I think for every person, you may have multiple client certificates with you. You might have keys that you're using to connect to different I don't want to drop all the acronyms, but they're all different kind of keys, and because I might forget what they are now. All sorts of keys and right, so devices, client certificates, your Wi-Fi certificate, your virtual private network certificate, right? There's workloads that have whether they're microservices. There's a whole lot of different types of machines. So we see them as foundational to security, right? There's the human side, when you're talking about, and there's another one, you said MFA, you didn't, Brian, earlier.
Oh, man,
so multi-factor authentication. Sorry, I'm snitching on you.
Oh, you can come on again.
Wow. I knew I said it from the start. I was going to mess this up, and I should not have called Rob out. That was my mistake. Wow. Strategic failure.
So, right, there's on the human side, there's a lot of identity. There's multi-factor authentication. There's biometrics, all sorts of things that are maintained and secured. Well, you need the same thing on the machine side, right? So, and what makes it hard is, having that visibility, having that automation that you need because of so many different types of certificates and machine identities. It's only growing and it's only getting more diverse. And we can definitely talk about that because I can go on for hours, but there's a lot.
Yeah, and there's some changes coming up as well, right? I think changes to TLS, which is transport layer security, as well as SSL, which is secure sockets layer. We've got those out of the way. Now we can say them freely. But there are some changes coming up as well to those technologies, I believe, right? That people need to be aware of.
So, like everything you do on the internet, right? Whether you're buying your coffee, you're shopping, you're browsing, everything is this kind of, there's a trust associated with the internet that is really has empowered or created this world that we live in, this economy. You book a flight, you go book a room at a hotel. There's a trust level that is associated with that. No one's going to steal your information, that you can send your credit card information securely over the internet, that you can get feedback from your applications and you can work remotely. It's all based on these TLS certificates. And public certificates, in the past, when we started, they were lasting a long time, maybe 10 years, 5 years, 3 years. And that's changing. So that has been that has been approved. The CAB forum, the Certificate Authority and Browser Forum. It's a group of voluntary organizations, right? We have the large ones, Apple, Microsoft, Google. You have your browsers, you have your certificate authorities. Yeah, they voted in April that the lifetime, those life cycles of those certificates are going to shrink from 398 days to, starting in March, a few months away, to 200 days, and then 100 days in 2027, and then 47 days in 2029, right? So that's great for security, right? We're reducing the lifetime that a compromised certificate or an expired certificate can exist, right? You're helping prevent things like man-in-the-middle attacks. You're basically saying, hey, these machine identities are like human identities. We need to revalidate them quite often. We need to flip their passwords, basically flip their keys. We need to actually maintain proper hygiene on these public certificates more than before. But that really puts an operational load on everybody, on every organization, right? If you have a public certificate, whether a lot or a few, you're probably staffed for it. You're not going to be able to do this manually. So this is where automation is the only solution.
Yeah, and now I remember, this is obviously going back quite a long way, but when I first started security, I used to ask customers, how are you managing certificates? And in the period where there was a fraction of a number of certificates that we have now, and things like mobile device management were just being spoken about. So it was spreadsheets, but it still is largely spreadsheets. And so if you can imagine, you've got hundreds, thousands, maybe tens of thousands or upwards of certificates, and you're trying to manage that on a spreadsheet. How does that work? What does that, what's the impact of certificates expiring?
Yeah, no, that's absolutely accurate, right? So, what we see in our conversations is, and you see it actually on the news almost every week, every day, right? There's an outage, right? So there's an outage that, okay, the certificate expired. If it's a internal certificate, it might be, the users have to click OK and ignore on the browser, ignore the warning. But those are just user training things, or what we were talking about, like services going down, communications going down, encryption, authentication breaking, automated services going down, like critical infrastructure that is not available, satellite communications, airlines, every service, online, shopping, retail, and it happens quite often. So there's outages that affect income, revenue, affect brand reputation. But then there's also just things like, well, maybe the certificates had something wrong with them, right? So maybe a certificate authority, and this happens quite often, maybe once a year, once a year and a half, 2 years. There's some vulnerability that's discovered. There's some mistake that happened with the certificate authority where all the certificates have to be renewed basically overnight. Right. So how do you do that if you're managing them in spreadsheets? You don't know who owns them. You don't have the visibility of what applications they're tied to. What if you're using a wildcard certificate and it's in 100 or 1,000 different places? And so there's a lot of operational time is spent that could be actually spent on security, because the people that are doing these roles, they are security and they're infosec analysts, they're infosec engineers. Instead of manually renewing and manually tracking, they can actually be applying security to their applications, making them harder to break.
Yeah.
So,
And this is not just a security issue. So this is a resilience issue as well. So it's especially when I'm in Europe, Brian, you're Florin, you're in the US, but in Europe we have a lot of legislation around resilience. So we have DORA which is the Digital and Operational Resilience Act. We have the Cyber Resiliency Act as well. So a lot of those are based on making sure that critical services are available. So this isn't just a security risk around a compromised or potentially compromised certificate. This is actually core service to customers could go down.
Absolutely.
And that is then
Absolutely.
a huge issue from a regulation perspective. Sorry, Brian, I interrupted you. You probably heard of an acronym that I missed.
No, you're good. And I will, as discussed, Rob, I'm never calling you out ever again on anything, my friend. I'm still tripping over the fact of what you said, Rob, around and I completely forgot that these are managed. People are managing these in spreadsheets. That's the equivalent of like putting your password on a sticky note on your monitor, which is in its own, its own security risk. But Florin, what I was thinking about as we discussed like an AI, an agentic AI, we've got these MCP, these model context protocol servers that are out there, which are highly communicative, have their own identities. What are some of the, like, if we have listeners and people watching this show that are thinking, okay, I know agentic AI is like the new buzzword bingo. We've got to do this. We need our own MCP server. We need to be leveraging this technology. But I know identity is going to be like the most critical piece of securing this. Where do they start? What do they start looking at? Is it certificates? Is it something else? Where do you start when it comes to securing the identities of MCP servers?
That's an excellent question. So we view agentic AI, for example, it's kind of a mix of human and machine, right? So it's a machine that acts as a human. It acts on your behalf, right? The same concepts apply. It needs an identity. It needs security in terms of authentication and encryption. They're highly chatty, like you said. They talk to each other. There's information, highly critical and sensitive information that's being passed, especially on some of these more advanced models between each other, right? So how do you do this mutual TLS or MTLS that's usually done, this type of encryption where there's a client and a server and they both talk to each other as a client and a server? And usually, certificates are the current methodology for securing those. And we're looking at, and I'm sure the industry in general is looking at different kind of security models for agentic AI in terms of, is it going to be some sort of universal identity that gets created? And we're looking at a bunch of those as well. Happy to have those conversations from a CyberArk perspective, because that is one of the major initiatives that we have for this year and next.
Super interesting. All right. Yeah. So we're talking about, and we were just talking about this on the last show, right? Is that as AI comes out and as we use AI to secure, as we use AI to run our business, and as we defend against AI attacks, we're starting to kind of rethink some of the fundamental concepts that we've had up until this point, right? And so it sounds like with agentic AI, and correct me if I'm wrong in this, we're starting to rethink some of the fundamental concepts of identity and security, and maybe we need new types of identity. Is that where we're going with this, or is it using what we have in a different way?
I think it's going in the direction where there's a proliferation of different types of identities out there. And let me just bring it back in terms of just machines, right? So there's so many different, like code signing, like there's a sprawl of machine identity, right? So there's a sprawl, and every time there's a sprawl with anything, whether it's cloud data, there's always a consolidation phase. So there's code signing, so those machine identities that are assigned to PowerShell scripts, applications, anything artifacts that needs to be signed so that they're do supply chain management, software supply chain management. There's SSH. Who wants to throw that one out, right? That's an acronym. So secured something something shell. It's been a long time since I've actually looked that one up. SSH keys and SSH certificates, right? We got the TLS certificates, right? So there's a lot of sprawl in terms of identities on machine side, and I think it's something that looking forward, there's a workload identity that needs to be created, right? So any workload that gets spun up, maybe it's very ephemeral. It only lasts for a minute or a few hours. Maybe there's different things out there, different technologies like Spiffy and Spire that are being created, especially for in kind of the cloud native scenario, and AWS, I'm sure, where there's so many different machines and just so many different workloads. How do we create this one universal workload that can actually communicate to all of them? And then we can do some sort of translation. We can do some sort of and federation, let's just say, right? Think of the whole federation model with that's been successful for human identities.
It's really interesting.
Yeah.
So, as far as I know, SSH is still secure shell. But if there's an acronym that's hiding behind that I've forgotten about, let us know in the comments.
I think that's what
I'll
it
take
is.
that. I'll take that
It
one on
is.
the
I think
chin
you're
because
good.
I've always known it's secure shell. So
Yep.
somebody who knows better, I'm sure, will be viewing. We've spoken quite a lot about the scale of the issue, about the fact that people have been struggling with managing certificates and arguably machine identities for a long time. So, what are some concrete things? What's the first steps that if you're a security professional, you've got lots of certificates, maybe you don't actually know how many certificates you've got.
Yeah.
What are some concrete steps that you could take? What would the three things that you could do to one, realize the extent of how many certificates you have, and then to put in place some sort of automation to make sure that you don't have resilience issues or
Yeah.
failures.
Yeah. So if you look, I spent years in professional services, so I like the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 steps, and usually it starts off with find out what you don't know, right? So it's the step one. There's a step 0, which we can talk about too. That's like getting everybody on board and making sure they're aligned. But step 1 is getting that visibility, getting an inventory, like finding out how many public certificates you have. And this isn't a problem that is limited to public certificates, right? Internal private certificates, pardon me, those have needed automation for decades as well, right? This just happens to be a very time-bound enforcement and compliance issue that is creating a operational issue with the public certificates. We've needed to have internal certificate management for years as well, because there's probably many more internal certificates for most customers, there are organizations, than there are for their external ones. So getting that visibility, creating an inventory, and knowing when they expire, who they belong to, what application they're associated to, that's the first step. Like just know, get a lay of the land, know what's going on. Then the second one is, all right, I have a view into my certificates, and I know what I want to do with them. Like I need some ownership, but I want to do some policy enforcement. How long are they going to live for? what are the standards and controls that are gonna be associated with them. So you could put in how long they're valid for. Now we're forced into that situation by the deadlines, but you can do that internally as well. You can have the same rigor and hygiene that you have external public certificates, you can have them internally. Once you have visibility and inventory, you have ownership, you know who they belong to, you have policy enforcement, so they're all standard, there's no typos, there's no mistakes. Now you go into, okay, let's automate. Let's take out the factor of, I'm going to renew these certificates via email. I'm going to renew these certificates via, you know, Teams or chat or Slack or whatever. It's going to go through an automated platform, a system that maybe has self-service. So the different lines of businesses can do self-service. They can request for, and they have ownership and they have a stake in the process. But then the next step is getting that automation. So you are doing the certificate request, installing it on the server, putting it on the clients, doing it, doing every step automated, where every step that's potentially error prone, if you do it manually, is automated. And I think the last step is just building that resilience in there, so that if there is a failure, if there is, even if the automation breaks, you start saying, okay, where does automation break? So it's kind of a continuous loop at that point. It just keeps going. Like, you got to refine and make it better, but start with visibility, and with constant validation.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
And just
Great insight.
the piece in the middle, just really quickly, I'm curious, like visibility, you're scanning, you're identifying. I mean, you're going to have to automate that. That has to be automated. You're not going to go out there and discover on your own. But the piece of making the decisions of how long do these live? What are, how do we make sure that our identities aren't over permissive? Like that governance piece. If you're a starting CISO, how do you make those decisions? I mean, there are like requirements out there. There's kind of a backstop of what you shouldn't be doing, but how do you make a security posture decision based on like what you have? Is there like a framework out there that you can adhere to? Is it just based on your business context? I mean, what kind of guidance would you provide to those out there that need to make that decision?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. There is a backstop, and then there's a backstop, and there's best practices, and then what's realistic for your organization, and it's all a balance of risk as well. There's a number of different frameworks out there. NIST is one, National Institute of something in technology, standards in technology.
Yeah,
there's
Nicely done.
Well
I'm
done.
not going to say more because I don't know them all off the top of my head, but there's a few more. There's a bunch of different ones, and frameworks, and even the ones you said earlier around DORA, and some of the ones out in the EU that are very important, right? They're kind of the resiliency type of frameworks. And you're absolutely right. So looking at it from the CISO level, right? At this point, machine identities, especially around these 47-day lifetimes, have become a board level concern, right? So the C level, the CISO needs to be able to communicate to their board that the risk that this is creating, the operational risk and the security risk that this is creating by not having automation, if you don't have automation, is something that's been mitigated with by that visibility and by that enforcement. So luckily on the public side, it's fairly rigid, right? 200 days starting March 15th of 2026. So every new certificate that gets issued after March 15th. In 2027, it's going to be 100 days. So think about your renewing certificates in 2027 every 3 months. And in 2029, it's going to be every 47 days, which operationally probably means monthly, right? You got change control, you got you have to need to validate that, it's good. It's, you don't wait until the last day to renew, even with automation, to renew. So you got to work that into the regimen of the operation of the team to be able to do do renewals every month. It's getting to the point that it might be conceptually the same thing as, oh, here's an acronym, like renewing your IP addresses with DHCP, dynamic host, something.
Control protocol.
Control protocol. There you go. Right. So imagine like you're getting certificates as quickly as you're getting IP addresses, right? It might be that ephemeral. It might be that non-consequential in terms of automation. Just makes that happen.
That's really
So
interesting.
along those lines, it's not, you've got like the automation piece, but identity also is not, it's not the centralized basket of goodies that it used to be, right? It used to be, I've got Active Directory and I've like, that's it. That's my identity thing. Right. And now it's kind of a distributed technology solution out there, right? It's not just one thing. How important is it to know what identity control systems you have out there and having them to integrate and talk and work together? Because I know I'm going to throw out there really quickly, of course, like Hardplug, AWS Certificate Manager, ACM on our side, works with you guys and what you do. So how important is it to have an identity strategy that stitches together?
Yeah, that is the goal that we should be looking at, right? So in terms of, right, so one of the things that CyberArk Certificate Manager has really excelled with is the integration with different platforms out there and different solutions out there, right? So you're talking about, AWS ACM being able to go in and to discover all the certificates in all your regions on the ACM. So give you that one pane of view. Also connecting to your load balancers out there, regardless of their, F5, NetScalers, all the different types that they're out there, your next gen firewalls, your application layer firewalls, your inventory, ITSM, your inventory tools out there. I'm full of acronyms today, but there's so many layers, right? So load balancers, firewalls, next gen firewalls, cloud, right? We just talked about AWS. So having that one view into all of your certificates, all your machine identities. What about your cloud native stuff? So your Kubernetes, working with Cert Manager to get your certificates off of your clusters as well. Right. So they're having that one-stop shop, and then you got your public certificates and your internal certificates all in one. So that's the level of integration that, from a platform you really want, is to be able to see a full inventory.
That's super important as well, because one of the things that we talk to customers about is, customers when they first start to migrate to the cloud, it's like, what do I do about identity? What do I do about certificates? How do I make sure that our developers are using the tools they want to use, which is typically cloud native, and enabled to move fast and get full functionality? But how do we maintain centralized control and visibility of all these different tools? And so that's the kind of definition of a platform, really, is making sure that you've got visibility and control over all of those different areas, but your developers can use the tools they need in AWS or wherever they are. I think that's super important for making sure that we stay secure.
Yeah, absolutely. And so on September 30th, I'll be doing a AWS immersion workshop, and people will be able to see how to connect to AWS and connect to ACM and do that. So that's
amazing.
The QR code there.
So I'm going to get that completely wrong, but somehow like that. So if you'd like to join the immersion workshop and join Florin and find out more, then please use the QR code and join up. Florin, it's been amazing having you. Thank you so much. You've been an awesome guest and really, really great insights. Thank you very much to our audience. We have been Security Live, and we will see you in 2 weeks' time. Thank you very much.
Bye, everyone.